And we are live again on Small Business Solutions Monday with Deborah R. Nelson. And this week we have Miss Dr. Sapp, Dr. Sheila Sapp, that is coming to us live tonight. She's giving us some of her time, her energy, and her wisdom in the education department. And she's going to tell us how passionate she is about children, the youth, and raising them up to be educated, empowered, and what you can do as parents and what you can do in a community to help be a part of this effort. So, Miss Dr. Sapp, without further ado, can you please introduce yourself and tell us where you're from and your business?
Hi, good evening, everyone. As Ms. Nelson said, I am Dr. Sheila Sapp, and I am originally from New Jersey, but I've lived in Georgia since 1979. So currently I'm in Woodbine, Georgia, and I'm a recently retired educator. And my business is Sheila E Cares, and I focus on helping families, children, teachers, and school leaders. And I'm all about encouraging people and helping people reach their full potential. And as Ms. Nelson mentioned, one of my biggest things is really working with parents. I wrote a book several years ago called The Learning House. And I currently am waiting for the publication of my fourth book, which talks about ways that parents, teachers, and school administrators can empower youth for life success. I don't think parents realize how important they are and the role that they can play in their child's life. Like, for example, in the book, on one of my chapters, I focus on 4 power tools. That's self-esteem, self-confidence, resiliency, and perseverance. And I bet a lot of parents don't realize that those tools are very important. It doesn't matter what your capabilities are or how smart you are, but if you don't feel good about yourself, which involves self-esteem, or if you don't have the confidence, or if you doubt yourself, talk about self-confidence, or the ability to bounce back when things go wrong, and that's when you talk about resiliency. And then, of course, as you know, there are times when you try something and it doesn't work, so you have to be able to keep going, persevering. So it is my wish to pass this message on to as many parents as possible because, as I said, those power tools are skills that can start from birth. And when you talk about self-esteem, it's very important for parents to have good self-esteem themselves. So in starting off, you want to make sure your children are loved unconditionally. And by that, I mean you don't expect them to do things based on their behavior. You love them regardless of whether they make mistakes or not. And they need to feel that they're accepted and that if they make a mistake, that there's nothing wrong with making a mistake and being wrong, because that's one of the ways that children as well as adults learn. So something else that I want to share with you is there are games that parents can do at home and involve not only their children, but the whole family. Now, when I talked about self-esteem, I just happen to have a mirror here.
Oh, I love that.
And yeah, one of the activities that I do with children is I have them look in the mirror. And when they look in the mirror, I want them to focus on what they see. And I ask them to tell me 5 things that they like about themselves.
Nice.
Now, when I did this activity at a community event, you would be amazed at the number of children who really couldn't tell you or tell me some of the things that they liked about themselves. And it was funny in that the parents were saying, oh, well, you have a nice smile and you're very helpful. And as I sat there and listened to some of the parents coach their children, I thought, those are the things that they need to hear while they're growing up. And whether parents realize it or not,
Wow.
children learn who they are and how they feel about themselves from the people that are around them, their caregivers, their parents, or there may be a grandparent in the home. And sometimes parents don't realize that even their talk, if there's negative talk, if they say negative things to their children, or if they say negative things about themselves, the children will pick that up. And something else that I would like to mention is I have another game, and this also has to do with self-esteem. And I just have these 2 cups. But what you do is on one cup, on a sheet of paper, well, really like an index card, you write, I can. And then on the other cup, you write, I am. And the child can say, well, I can write, or I can count to 110, or I can tie my shoe. Or for the I am cup, I am happy, I am smart, I am pretty, I am kind. But the whole idea is for them to put these things that they feel about themselves in the cup and watch them grow. And so depending on the type of experiences that they have at home, that will help determine how they feel about themselves. And as far as resiliency, sometimes as parents, we don't want to see our children make mistakes, not realizing that they learn from mistakes. Now, I'm not saying that you let them do something where they hurt themselves, but children need to learn how to problem solve. And like, for example, let's say they go to school and they leave their lunch at home. Well, most parents will run up to the school and bring their lunch. Or let's say that they decide that they don't want to eat what they're serving or what's being served for lunch in school, or maybe they don't want to eat what's for dinner. Well, that's a choice that they should live with. And there are other things that they can do to develop their resiliency through problem solving. Now, and I know as parents, and I have a daughter myself who is grown, we don't want to see them get in trouble or make mistakes. But think about the mistakes that you made or the lessons that you learned.
Right.
And how you learn how to solve problems. You learn some coping skills along the way. So you want your children to learn the same thing. And also, when you're working with them, something else as far as perseverance and getting them to not give up is you can have them do a chore, or you can have them work on a project where it's going to take some time, that they're really going to have to stick to it. It might be learning how to play an instrument or taking dance lessons. Now, just think, when you take that first dance class, you don't leave being a ballerina or a jazz artist. The first day you have to practice, and the more you practice, the better you get. So you persevere until you accomplish whatever that goal or that task is. So those are just a few things that I mentioned, and I have many more games and ideas for parents to use. And I do want to say, if children and youth are equipped with those power tools, then they can do and accomplish whatever they set out to do.
I totally agree. And this is coming from the child perspective, right? So I don't have children, so I can speak on that and say, I always give thanks to my parents because everything that I am is because the very first words that I heard as a child from my mother was knowledge is power. I think I was like 12 and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
what is knowledge? And I remember she told me to go get a dictionary and look it up. And from that point on, I just repeated knowledge is power, knowledge is power. My father has always called me beautiful, or he's throughout my entire life. So I completely understand if you don't get it from home, if you don't get those tools from the very first
Mm-hmm.
people that you talked to growing up, where do you get it from? So the game that you play with the children, and they hold up the mirror, and you tell them to say 5 things that they
That,
are, right? Did you say that
that
they
they
are?
like about themselves.
That
What
they,
and that
yeah,
they like about themselves.
that they like about themselves. What was your response? Were you shocked when the children were unable to say what they liked about themselves at a young age? They should like everything, right? You would think.
Well, some did manage to say some things, but one of the things that I did say to the parents was to um, try to talk with them and share and talk, really communicate the fact that, oh, I like the way you help around the house, or,
Nice.
you keep your room nice and neat, or you're very kind to your brother or your
Nice.
sister. So they start to learn those things about themselves. And and in some cases I did help a few of the children and I said, oh, what do you like? What about your hair? And if they smile and I said, oh, you really have a nice smile. But that was some of the few little tips that I gave them to help them. But I do want to say this, that I think for girls, it's, and really for boys too, it's so important to love yourself and to feel good about yourself. And if you
Absolutely.
feel good about yourself, when you go to school or wherever you are, because sometimes children can be cruel
Yes.
and they may call you names, and some of the names hurt. But if you know who you are and whose you are, then some of those names will just roll right off of your back and you'll learn how to problem solve and maybe come up with some quick comebacks. So, and you hear about young kids when that girl or boy who they thought was the love of their life kicked them to the curb,
Oh
as they
yeah.
say. They think about harming themselves.
Yeah. At such young
Now,
ages.
yes, at young ages. And I think about, with what we're going through now with the pandemic, and parents are spending more time with their children. And I think this is the perfect time
Yes.
to improve communication
Yes.
and to find those things that will help build and strengthen bonds, because you want them to be able to come to you and feel comfortable in talking with you if they have some thoughts that aren't positive, if they're having negative thoughts about themselves. Because I know older children have the tendency to talk to their friends, but
More than they talk to their parents, right?
right, more than they talk to their parents. But I
Absolutely.
really feel that those 4 skills that I call the power tools are very important. And as I always say, parents are their child's first teachers. And
Yes.
I think they forget about the fact that everything that their child knows and how he feels about himself and what he thinks about learning, by the time they go to kindergarten or preschool, the parents have taught them.
Yes.
Children spend those early years watching and
Wow.
listening. and they are absorbing everything
Everything.
in that home environment. So we want that environment to be a positive,
Yes.
nurturing one.
It's funny that you say that because you know what was going through my mind? I was thinking about like couples who are getting ready to get married. They go to like, premarital class. Now, I was just thinking it's just equally as important, right? Before you have your first child, there's nothing wrong with go to maybe some pre-parenting courses. Again, like I don't have children. That is probably something I would be interested in. Like what are some tools that I can think about imparting into my children at an early age because we're all human, right? We make enough
Yes.
mistakes behind closed doors. Now you give us a child, and now we have to be super conscious of what we say and what we do. And it's kind of like something that we just learn along the way. And I know that many people will say, well, with my first child, that's when I learned all of my lessons. That's when I learned how to raise children. Is there something
Mhm.
that maybe first time parents should consider, or even parents who have multiple children and are still trying to figure it out?
I feel that parents, and it depends, there are some parents who are, like you hear people say, like they were made to be moms and dads. And I think a lot of that depends on the role models. But if you did not have a good role model, and I really think that parenting is one of the things that, I mean, there are many books out, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you do learn by experience, by your experiences. But I really feel that parents need to, or young parents before they have children, need to sit down and ask themselves some questions. How do they feel about learning? What are some of the rules that we want to have in our house?
Yeah.
Are you the type of person who, some people are very uptight and they're strict rule followers, and
That's me.
they're not, and they're not open to differences. And, we have children who may have special needs, and
Right.
they need different of experiences, and they need real good understanding and having parents who are knowledgeable about what to do. So I would think it would be good to sit down, and the first thing is to look at yourself, and you and your spouse just talk about, your beliefs and your values, and what you want to instill in that young boy and girl, and what is your hope for them in the future. And most important of all, parents need to realize that because you birthed them, they are not totally yours. They have their own personalities, and let them develop into those personalities. And I think sometimes because they look like us and maybe have some of our, maybe their personality may be a little bit like ours, but we tend to want them to be like us.
Just like us, right?
Yeah, just like us. And no, no. And I think about my daughter, who is very different from me, but we have always gotten along. And one of the things that she's an avid reader,
Hmm.
and I can give myself credit for that, because that's all she saw in growing up, me reading. And I spent time taking her to the library. So that's also something that young parents can talk about. What are the experiences
True.
that we want our children to have? Um, and what type of home environment do I want? What can I do to create the type of environment that my child will be curious, interested in learning, and being open and positive? Now, one of the things that they need to look at is their self talk, what they say about themselves.
Ah.
Because how they feel about themselves will also come across to young children and to babies. So I
The
think that's
parent,
where I would recommend, yeah, the parent.
what parents say in front of their children about themselves can
Hmm.
rub off on their children.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Because remember, parents are walking billboards.
Hmm.
And, when I was a principal, that's one of the things that I try to be very conscious of, because people look at you and just by your expression, they figure, uh-oh, well, maybe this, she's not having a good day. But that wouldn't be the case. But I'm saying that to say that we are our children's role model. We're the first connection to the outside world for them. So, how they're treated at home, what they're taught, their values, their beliefs, and their principles come from the parent. And you can't show kindness if you're not kind. You can't be open if you're not an open-minded person. And so that's my big thing too. So if I let a parent group, young parents, that's what I would tell them. Know yourself first and know each other and agree or come up with a compromise if you disagree on certain parenting like techniques, or even deciding, like, some parents don't want their children to do chores. Now I think chores
I like those
are
parents.
that's an excellent way to teach responsibility
Yeah,
and to build self-confidence
true,
and self-esteem,
true.
and also problem solving, resiliency, and perseverance. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
It's so earlier I was talking to a good friend of mine, Ashley. It's her birthday. Woo! Happy birthday. And we went to college together, and we've basically been going about life together since
Mhm.
2009. And we were saying, like, oh my gosh, when we become parents, and we were actually saying a few things that we need to consider, like, oh, we have to be more selfless, need to adjust our schedules. Being a parent is huge. And for the people who are listening, they probably know I don't have children, but family and children are like everything to me. When I do have them, I know it's a lifestyle change. So this information that you're giving is great for people who haven't had children, right? And even for people who have. Now,
Yes.
I'm going to look at it from a different perspective. Say I'm someone who has three children. And maybe they're toddlers and I have one in middle school. What can I do today to kind of shift my parenting style? Because my children are already used to me, but there are some things that I want to fix to instill some values. What advice do you have?
One of the things that I would advise that parent to do is to be authentic and sit down and have a family meeting. And I would just simply say, Johnny, or, well, the older one, Johnny. I'll give him the name Johnny.
All right, Johnny.
You know, Johnny, remember I said that, we make mistakes sometimes.
Um,
And, I'm human, and I have tried to be very forgiving when you have made mistakes and so forth. Well, I just want to be honest with you. There's some things that I have done, or that I have tried with raising you, that I want to try something different, and I need your help. And one of the things that I want to work on is,
wow.
I notice that when I get angry, sometimes some of the words that come out of my mouth shouldn't be said. Or sometimes I say negative things about myself, like, oh, that was dumb of me. Or, how could I have been that stupid? Well, Johnny, here's how you can help me. I'm going to intentionally think about the negative things that I say and watch when something goes wrong. If I say some curse words that I really don't want you saying, and after all, I want to be a good role model for you. And here's how you can help me. I have this jar, and every time you hear me say something negative about myself, or if I use an inappropriate word, then I'm going to put 50 cents in that jar or whatever the amount is. And the goal is for me, of course, not to do those things, but I want you to help me. And you may have to remind me sometimes. So whatever money is in there, because I know starting out, when you have a habit, sometimes it takes some time to get rid of a bad habit. So that's why I really need to
Absolutely.
have you help me. So that jar may be full, but whatever's in it is going to be yours. But I promise you that I'm going to work hard to be more positive and say positive things about myself and watch my language. So I think I would start off with something like that. I think children need to know that even the fact that we're adults and we're their parents, that we don't always say the right thing or do the right thing, and that we're human, and that it's never too late to change or to improve. And I think that's a great lesson to teach your child or your children. So that's what I would offer as a step. And then, of course, if you have anyone that you are close to, maybe a neighbor or someone else, and you've been around them enough and you like their style of parenting, then I would ask them to be a mentor and tell them, what you're trying to do and what you like about the parenting skills that they use, and what suggestions or what things could they offer to help you be a better parent. I think that there's always room for improvement, and that is just one way in involving your children to help you be a better you. And by you being a better you, then your children will be better also.
I completely agree. When you were saying those things, like all the advice that you were giving, if there's anybody with a personality like me, I don't like to be defeated. I don't like to do things wrong. So how do you get so how do you get over those thoughts? Like feeling like you're not living up to something, right? Because everyone's dream is to be a good parent. So would you just say it's like anything else? Like it's something you need to work on consistently, or, how do you fix the emotions of feeling like you're not doing well with parenting?
Well, it's funny that you should say that, because that's one of my problems. One of the things that I'm working on is perfectionism. And there's only trying to be perfect is humanly impossible. You do your best. And sometimes trying to be perfect and making sure everything is right closes some doors. And if you put that on your children, then they are not going to feel open and comfortable in coming to you when they do make mistakes or when they need help, because you have set yourself up. You've set such a high standard that they won't feel that they can even approach you or meet that expectation. So,
Wow.
yeah. So really think about that, because I have some friends who are on Facebook all the time and they do interviews all the time. And they are like some of the commentators on TV. And I look at them and I think, wow, now why can't I be like that? But then I have to step back and say, I can only be Sheila. And that's what
Yes,
you want
I
your
love that.
children. Yeah. You want them to be authentic and to be who they are. And and I know it used to upset me when I would find little mistakes, but now I've kind of let some of those things go and say, okay, tomorrow's another day. I learned something that I need to do the next time, but I'm not going to beat myself up about it. And I think that if you strive to be perfect all of the time, you keep yourself from doing things. So you don't want to block anything. And as I said, Rome wasn't built in a day.
That's
So
so
you
true.
so you just keep persevering. You
That's
just
great.
keep persevering.
That's great advice for parents. And again, like if you missed out on the power tools that Dr. Sapp mentioned earlier, self-esteem, self-confidence, resiliency, and perseverance. Like instilling that in you first as a parent so that you can instill that into your children. That is huge. With that being said, so this is like your specialty is basically pouring into parents and building them up to be in my opinion, great parents, right?
Yes.
So along this journey, you were in the education department, you were a principal, you have years and years of experience in this field with the youth. What made you want to turn this into your business?
To be honest with you, Sheila E. Cares was started many years ago. And I thought about it. And when you work as an administrator, you're a principal 365 days. It's a 24-hour job.
For
And so
sure.
I really didn't have a lot of time to put into it. And so now I have more time. And the other reason is, which goes back to my childhood. And growing up, I was the only African American girl, black girl in my class. And there was one black boy. And I think I was in about first grade. And I remember having lonely times outside at recess. No one would play with me.
Wow.
And the children would come up and ask things like about my skin color and my hair and why were my lips so thick. And I found that I began not to like who I was. I didn't even want to look in the mirror. I
Wow.
loved school, I loved learning, and I didn't even tell my mother about this. And one day when I was outside against the iron fence that surrounded the schoolyard, one of my classmates came up to me, and her name was Karen, and she was white, she was Polish American, and asked me if I would play with her. And from that day onward, we became friends, and we were together the rest of first grade and second grade and in third grade. She never asked me about my color. She never said anything about my looks, my hair. I got a chance to go over to her house. She was just kind. And I learned that there are some people who care or like you for who you are, and they're not concerned about what they see on the outside. Well, that year in the winter, we had a bad snowstorm. And I know it was in January, and we were home happy because it was a snow day, no school. And the next day, we were still out, and there was an article in the paper. My friend was hit by a train. She and her brother were crossing a railroad track, and they were hit and killed. And it took me some time to get over that loss, but I just liked her kindness, and I just felt that one day I wanted to write a story, and I started it and I haven't finished it, but to tell her story. And I became a teacher because I wanted to share with other children the importance of getting to know people and to appreciate differences and to like people for who they are. And so when I became a principal, then I shared my Karen story with my faculty and my students. And so a part of what I'm doing as Sheila E Cares and my focus on self-esteem and self-confidence is all tied into that, which started, I want to say, when I was young and led me to become a teacher. And so now I have this business, and I am trying to encourage and build up everyone I can and every person I can.
That's amazing. I always love asking, like, what inspired your story?
Mm-hmm.
What inspired your business? So I knew it had to be something deep rooted in that.
Yes,
That's amazing. So wow, it's pushed you this far. Now you're helping so many other people in
right,
their households. And like you said earlier, like it starts with the parents, and then you're raising children that can just, recreate the wheel and just like
right.
have a moving force. And I think that's amazing. So, Dr. Sapp, I am truly honored to have you on the show tonight. Thank you for your time. And I'm from New Jersey as well. So,
Oh,
uh,
really? What part?
I don't want to say it on the show, but South
Okay.
Jersey.
Well, that's where I'm from, South Jersey.
Oh, wow.
Yes. I
It's
lived 10 minutes from Philadelphia.
oh, nice,
So that's
nice. I
it.
live roughly 40
Mm-hmm.
minutes away, so we're like in the same area. Um,
Oh,
but
okay.
again,
How about that?
yeah. But thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. You share so many gems for parents out there. If you're just tuning in, you didn't get a chance to see it from the beginning, rewind it, go back to the power tools, self-esteem, self-confidence, resiliency, perseverance. Remember that parents, you are your children's first role model. That's so important and so
Right,
true. And also, remember that it's okay to take some time out every now and then to determine what values you want to instill in your children. It's okay. It doesn't matter if you have multiple children, doesn't matter if you've been parenting for years. According to Dr. Sapp, that's the perfect time to sit down and have that one-on-one with your children. So, again, thank you so much.
and thank you.
Guests, you're welcome. Viewers, it's another week of Small Business Solutions Monday. Thank you so much for your time. And as always, stay blessed.